this is actually the Department of Homeland Security actually issued a memo in which it defined three kinds of, I kid you not, terrorism: mis, dis, and malinformation. Misinformation are errors. Disinformation are intentional errors, lies, and malinformation are things that are based in truth but cause you to distrust authority.
So malinformation is what you commit when you catch them lying.
Yes, exactly. It is discussing the lies of your government is malinformation, and therefore a kind of terrorism, which I should point out, as funny as that is, and as obviously Orwellian as that is, it's also terrifying, because if you have tracked the history of the spreading tyranny from the beginning of the War on Terror, you know that terrorism is not a normal English word the way it once was. Terrorism is now a legal designation that causes all of your rights to evaporate. So at the point that the Department of Homeland Security says that you are guilty of a kind of terrorism for saying true things that cause you to distrust your government, they are also telling you something about what rights they have to silence you. They are not normal rights. So they have to silence you. They are not normal rights. So these things are all terrifying, and I do think, as much as
my jaw's open,
the COVID pandemic caused us to become aware of a lot of structures that had been built around us. Something that former NSA officer William Binney once described as the turnkey totalitarian state. The totalitarian state is erected around you, but it's not activated. And then once it's built, the key gets turned. And so we are now seeing, I believe, something that even outstrips William Binney's description, because it's the turnkey totalitarian planet, right? The World Health Organization is above the level of nations, and it is going to be in a position, if these provisions pass, to dictate to nations how they are to treat their own citizens, to override their constitutions, despite what Tedros has just told you. It's not inherently about health. What I think has happened is the fact of a possible pandemic causes a loophole in the mind. It's not a loophole in our governance documents. Our Constitution doesn't describe, exemptions from your rights during time of a pandemic emergency. Your rights simply are what they are, and they're not supposed to go anywhere just because there's a disease spreading. But nonetheless, people's willingness to accept the erosion of their rights because of a public health emergency has allowed this tyranny to use it as a Trojan horse.
Yes.
And I think that's also, it's something people need to become aware of, that there are a number of features of our environment that are basically, they are blind spots that we can't see past. Vaccine was one, and I know I was an enthusiast. I'm now very alarmed at how they are produced, and I'm even more alarmed at what has been called a vaccine that doesn't meet the definition, right? That because many of us believe that vaccines were an extremely elegant, low harm, high efficacy method of preventing disease, when they called this mRNA technology a vaccine, many of us gave it more credibility than we should have. If they had called it a gene transfection technology, we would have thought, wait, what? That sounds highly novel, and it sounds dangerous, and how much do we know about the long-term implications? But because they called it a vaccine, people were much more willing to accept it. So the idea that public health is potentially a place to improve all of our well-being is real. But once you decide that there's something above doctors relative to your health, then that can be an excuse for all manner of tyranny. Public health has been adopted. It's like the sheep's clothing that has allowed the wolf to go after our rights, because in theory it's trying to protect us from harms that we would like to be protected.
And it generates such fear, it's at such a huge scale, that it weakens people's moral immune systems. They will
Absolutely.
accept things they would never accept otherwise.
Absolutely. And as you know, and as I know, when we raised questions about what was being delivered to us under the guise of public health, we were demonized as if we had a moral defect. It wasn't even a cognitive defect where we were failing to understand the wisdom of these vaccines. It was a moral defect where we were failing to protect others who were vulnerable by questioning these things. So the idea that health is at stake in some vague, larger sense that requires us to override the natural relationship between doctors and patients is itself a coup against medicine by something else. And we need to become aware of that.
Sure.
I suspect, and I really don't know, I don't think anybody knows, but I suspect that some powerful set of forces has decided that consent of the governed is too dangerous to tolerate, and that it has begun to unhook it. And we do not know how this works. We can see some of the partners who are involved in this, but I don't think we know ultimately who's driving it or where they're going. I think many of the notions that we picked up about nations and who our friends are and who our enemies are they are now more misleading than they are informative. In other words, I don't think the U.S. has an enemy called China. I think there are elements within the U.S. that are partnered within with elements within the Chinese Communist Party for practical reasons, and so the notion that these two parties are competing with each other just distracts us from what's actually taking place. But let's just put it this way. We have a large global population. Most people have no useful role through no fault of their own. They have not been given an opportunity in life to find a useful way to contribute. And I wonder if the rent-seeking elites that have hoarded so much power are not unhooking our rights because effectively they're afraid of some global French Revolution moment as people realize that they've been betrayed and left without good options. Is that what we're seeing? Certainly feels like we're facing an end game where important properties that would once have been preserved by all parties because they might need them one day are now being dispensed with, and we're being, we're watching our governmental structures and every one of our institutions captured, hollowed out, turned into a paradoxical inversion of what it was designed to do. It's not an accident. Whether they, the thing that worries me most actually is that whatever is driving this is not composed of diabolical geniuses who at least have some plan for the future, but it's being driven by people who actually do not know what kind of hell they are inviting.
Yes.
They're going to create a kind of chaos from which humanity may well not emerge. And I get the sense that unless they have some remarkable plan that is not obvious, that they are just simply drunk with power and putting everyone, including themselves, in tremendous jeopardy by taking apart the structures on which we depend.
Behold, thieves and beggars, never shall we die. Now some have died and some are alive, and others sail on. never seen.